The simplest way to describe a spirit animal is any animal that comes to you in an unusual way, or and or repeatedly over a short piece of time. That hummingbird, I've heard this story like 3 or 4 times. A hummingbird just hovering right directly in front of you, for instance. I would call that unusual. If you think about it, it's not often you see that happening. The other piece about to understand spirit animals too is that they can show up symbolically. They can show up in a dream, for instance, as symbolizing that particular animal, that impression that you get from a dream. It could also be things like a conversation you overhear at the supermarket. You may, let's say use coyote as an example. I have that experience at the evening, and I'm kind of wondering about it. Maybe it's a spirit animal, I'm not sure, and then I go to the supermarket the next day and they're talking about coyotes. Or I go by a truck and I look on the side of the truck, and coyote moving service or something like 1, 2, 3. That's repetition. It's true in other types of symbol signs and omens too, but particularly specifically with spirit animals. So there is a connection that I think is and a remembrance that's been lost along the way in the large part of the world, and that is that the remembrance of who we really are, that we are connected to all beings in this world. And we're talking about the physical beings, certainly, but also the ordinarily non-visible beings. So when you see that hummingbird, for instance, okay, what's the deal? You're starting to understand a little bit about spirit animals. So you decide, okay, I want to check this one out, and I think this is a spirit animal. According to this guy that I heard, that's a spirit animal because it's unusual. So you have a couple of ways that you can discern the message. One certainly is you can look it up somewhere. You can look it up on the internet, or there's a few books out there, including mine, that may give you suggestions and ideas and such. Another way is more analytical, is to consider the characteristics of that particular animal. And you can use your logic, which is fine, and analyzing it. Okay, what do you think of when you think of a hummingbird? What do you think of? What are the characteristics? Well, first off, they're unusual winged ones in that they can fly backwards. They can fly in all different directions. That's very unusual. So let's keep that in mind. The other is that they pollinate flowers. So you think the term sweetness, for instance. Another is, I defy anyone who's listening to this to not get a smile on your face when you see a hummingbird. They're just such amazing creatures, as all are, but certainly when one's right in front of your face, you can feel the awe. I get little prickles on my skin when I talk about that, how really amazing it is. So the message might be that you're flitting around too much. It may be that you need to be more flexible, using the metaphor of being able to fly in different directions. It may be that you need more sweetness in your life in some way. And then I tell people what you do then is you check that out, whether you read about it or you deduce it from the characteristics of the animal. What does it resonate? How does it resonate with you? And last but certainly not least, as you practice this more and more, here's what I want you to do. Close your eyes. Take a couple of nice deep breaths. Send a request to the spirit of that animal. I sometimes say that animal's like a sales rep. Okay, trying to get your attention. So the hummingbird got my attention, the coyote got my attention, etc. So they become a sales rep for, you could say, the collective consciousness of that entire species. That's pretty big. And what you do then is send a message, not just to the physical animal, again, they're a representative, but to the spirit animal, or the spirit of that animal, hummingbird spirit, coyote spirit, eagle spirit, dolphin spirit. And you just say a simple question. Okay, what message are you bringing? And here's the key, okay? Pay attention to everything that happens right after that, what you see, hear, feel, or some combination of those. And it could be externally what you see, hear. It could be internally, the inner voice, your inner vision, sensations in your body. Just pay attention to all of that that comes to you, and then you can make an assessment as to what the message is.
My story starts when I was a neophyte animal communicator. So one day I got a call that said, could you come and see a horse that he's elderly and we're thinking maybe he has to be euthanized for a very serious and grave condition. Could you come? So I said, of course. Off I went. So the moment I entered the stall of the horse, his name was Jester, he told me, calm down. It's okay. I know this is a serious conversation we're about to have about my life. And you just have to realize that you're okay and you can do this, because he recognized that I was fearful of getting it wrong, because they really wanted to know if I thought Chester wanted to be euthanized. So I felt, I don't know, a weighing of his life in my hands, and whether or not the accuracy of my message, what if I got it wrong? Kind of a big deal, right? So Jester said, you're not going to get this wrong. This is all I want you to do. I want you to calm down, and I want you to tell them that you took it for the girl. And I said, you took it for the girl? He said, yes, I took it for the girl. That's the message. So I turned around and there were people crying in the stall, the vet, the trainer, the person that owned the horse, the woman. And I said, well, Chester said he's fine with this and that he took it for the girl. So when I said that, I felt kind of foolish because I didn't know what it meant. And it seemed a little nonsensical. And everyone just gasped when I said it. It turns out that the horse had a tumor on his leg. It looked almost like a large cantaloupe. It was big. And the girl was a young woman that had been his lifelong companion, who nearly died of a brain tumor. And mysteriously and miraculously, this brain tumor, like a year and a half before this happened, had shrunk on the girl, and she returned to normal health and went back to college. So Chester said, I'm old and I'm going to take this for her so that she can live on, and thank them for helping me, because yes, I'd like to cross over. So it was quite a startling thing for everyone in the presence of this amazing animal to be so noble, for one thing, to say he took the cancer from the girl. I mean, but it was such a learning curve for me, because it taught me a lot about trusting the message that you get when you're trying to communicate with animals. Their ability is so much more sophisticated and on so many more senses than ours is. And so the message is to be trusted, and you yourself, as the messenger, need to trust yourself.
So great to be here, and I'm honored to be a part of this book. My best friend had died. We grew up as sisters, and it was devastating. I really did not know how I could move on from that. Shortly after, I was walking over to watch sunrise, and I found this moth who was having trouble flying, and I realized that she had hurt one of her wings. This beautiful orange moth, I've never seen anything like it. And I felt almost like she was inviting me to pick her up and take her with me to the dock to watch the sunrise. So one of the most beautiful sunrises ever. And the message that I felt she was telling me is to make sure to stay connected with God and to be able to appreciate what life has to offer, such as the beauty of the sunrise. And then I decided to take her back home and nurse her until she was better so she could fly away. And I walked out to a screen porch that I had, and I placed her gently on the screen. And I decided to make some tea. When I came back out, there was this beautiful green lizard. And I decided to look it up because I've never seen anything like it. And lo and behold, one of his dietary supplements was moth. So in horror, I went out and I banged on the screen and the lizard dropped the moth, and I made sure to protect her and put her in a place where I felt she was going to be safe. And I checked on her often, and she was fine. So the next day when I went to work, I felt safe enough to leave her. And all throughout the day, I was excited to go back home and listen to some messages that she might have for me. But when I got home, I saw her on the table, and I thought, yes, she survived. And when I looked closer, she was filled with ants. And in that moment, I felt heartbroken all over again. There was a statue, a garden statue of a butterfly next to her with the word hope etched on her. And I remember just screaming to myself silently, there is no hope. I felt in that moment like my best friend died. I couldn't save the moth either. And I realized that I tried so hard to save my friend, giving her information and here, there's these supplements, and if you try this, if you do that. And the message that I got in that moment that brought me so much peace and understanding was that it was their time to go. And there was nothing that I could have done to save them because it wasn't my job to save them, just to love them.
In my story, the cat, the coyote, and the crows, these animals all linked up because they knew something that I didn't. I was getting ready at the time, this was a few years ago, to go on a long trip. And I had a little old cat who was nearly 18 years old. And she had topical things that I could see, such as hypothyroidism and arthritis. And other than that, I thought she was perfectly fine. And she liked to go out in the yard a little bit, but because of her arthritis, I didn't have to worry about her jumping over fences or escaping, and she would just putter around on the back porch a bit. So this one morning, I just opened the back door, and she turned around and looked at me, and I realized much later on it was almost like a goodbye. There was a significant look there that my rational mind didn't get at the time. So a couple minutes later, I heard the crows just going crazy. And because I'm a long-term shamanic practitioner and I tap into these things quickly, I heard them say, "Get outside now." So I dropped everything and went out, and there was a coyote who had jumped over my fence and had my cat in its teeth. And this had all happened within about 20 seconds. It was that fast. And I just went ballistic. I kind of did my big mama thing, ran at the coyote, growling and screaming to scare it off. And it turned around and glared at me and dropped my cat, went back over the fence. And I took my cat to the emergency room and told them what had happened. And they told me that they could probably do surgery on her, reconnect the nerves. The coyote had bitten into the back of her neck and she had lost the use of her back legs. But they said, we'll have to keep her here for a few weeks. We can't guarantee that she'll be able to walk again. And I thought, well, I'm going to be leaving for Peru in a couple of days. I don't know if this is the right thing for her. So I told them to give me some x-rays so that I could assess what the best thing was for her. And lo and behold, she had quite a large tumor in her lungs. So with seeing that, I was able to let her go too, rather than trying to hold on and keep her alive by more artificial means.
Even though I really had a very strong connection with animals throughout my life, it wasn't until that time that I really began to make the correlation between the signs and synchronicities with some of these animals showing up in my life and what that really meant. So when I was able to tie the animals showing up and their characteristics and then tying it back to things that were happening in my life, it became very clear that these animals, it just wasn't haphazard, right? These animals were showing up as guides and messengers. And so I embrace that and continue to embrace that as I move forward. And I began to learn as much as I could about spirit animals and animals in particular, right? And all the different characteristics they have and how that correlates to our lives. So I continue to go down that path. And I am continuing to broaden my connection with these animals. And I do that in a number of ways. One of which is getting out into nature, which is the simplest way to connect with the animals, being in their habitat and being able to study them and watch them and learn from them. And I also surround myself with their presence. So in my environment, I invite the animals in, not in the live form, even though I would love to do that, but they'd probably be happier in their own environment. But I do it via artwork. I do it via books, or if an animal were to leave a gift or a token for me, I certainly bring that in and honor that in my space. And I'm very happy to say that I have incorporated most of the things that Dr. Farmer talks about in the animals book, including I've explored animal communication. I definitely meditate on a daily basis and incorporate the animals into that. And I also drum and dance whenever I get the chance in honor of the animals. And one of the things that I've recently started incorporating on an annual basis is an animal tarot reading. And what that does for me is they utilize numerology in this reading. And so it gives me a foundation for the year moving forward. And they specify a certain animal each month that is kind of like my spirit animal, right? It's my totem. It's the strength and the characteristic that I need to turn to when I hit a bump in the road. And it also focuses on a certain animal that follows me throughout the entire year. And so I turn to those animals for strength and for reminding if they don't show up in my life in present human, animal, spirit form in any way. And so when I think back on my story with the wolves, what I love most about that story is it wasn't like a crazy, profound, in your face type of an experience. It was a very subtle yet profound experience. And even though it wasn't like a really grand message that they were telling me to walk away from, what they were reminding me of was our connection and our connection to one another and how very important that is as we move throughout our life. And that without one, everything gets askewed and the balance gets thrown out of whack. So to always remember that we are only as strong as the next being next to us, and to support and to love and to continue to move forward in life in that way, and to honor these animals whenever they show up in our life in real form, in dreams, or just in spirit.
In the book, I was really excited to share the story that came through at a time in my life where I was questioning my own personal power and self-worth, self-esteem. That was something I was working on. And when my animal came through, the jaguar, it was a time for me to start using this beautiful dream and meditation that came through for me to actually question what the animal means. For example, every time I see an animal such as the jaguar, I consider what characteristics, what qualities, why is it showing up for me in my life? So many animals have done this for me. And when we question their aspects of them, such as the jaguar, you think of strength and power and how sleek it can be when it walks into a room. At least in my dream, it was a room. It gives you a thought, a question in your mind, or a chain association that you're thinking about, why is this showing up for me? And that's with every animal that's ever came into my life. Jaguar, for example, again, that strength, that inner courage to get through. And it also is a confirmation. So that's why I love working with spirit animals, is because, first of all, it's a confirmation of what you already have inside that sometimes we don't see. Second, it also helps you with your intuition. So every animal I've been working with, especially owls, they are, again, look at the animal, the qualities and traits. If we question, why is this animal repeatedly showing up for me in my life? I consider For example, if I just had this dream of Al on a nice crystal, like iced branch, and I'm thinking, why is he showing up in a dream? And then he shows up for me when I open up a book to a random page. That's a message that he's trying to deliver to me to tell me I am on the right page of developing my intuition and listening to my heart.
I decided to share my story because I really feel that I have a unique perspective on life and life after death. During my near-death experience, my soul actually left my body and returned to the realm that we call heaven. And when I crossed the bridge, I was met there by my horse, Sassy, who was already in spirit. So I decided truly to share this story because I want to offer hope and comfort to so many people that have lost beloved animals that they care for so deeply. And we grieve their loss for many years after they pass over. And I also want to validate the hope that we all hold that our animals go to heaven. And they do. They're there. They're waiting for us. And I also feel that as people, we hold this misconception that the veil between us and spirit is this great divide that needs to be traveled. And I want to remind people or to tell people that spirit is with us always, every minute of every day. And the animals that we love, their guidance is available to us. The only thing that really holds us back is our limiting belief. So I think it's an important reminder for people just to reach out, to connect to animals that are in spirit, and to believe that the messages and the guidance that they receive are true. My personal story about my mare Sassy coming back to me in spirit began after my near-death experience. I had gone into the hospital for a routine sinus surgery, had a reaction to the medication that they used, and I went into cardiac arrest. So I was sent home to recover. It was a very difficult, lengthy recovery. And I felt that I was at the weakest point in my life that I had ever been. And when I felt that I didn't have the strength to go on, my mare came to me for me to lean on. When I felt that I didn't have strength, she lent me her strength. When I was afraid, she stood guard over me. And she reminded me that I was resilient. She gave me her endurance. She gave me her strength. She offered me her resilience. And the impact that I hope that my story has on people that read it is that I really want people to recognize as well that you are all stronger than you think you are. You are more resilient than you think you are. And even when you feel alone, you never truly are. Animals in spirit are always available to walk our journey with us, to lend us their support, their guidance, their wisdom, and their strength.
I started opening up to spirit a couple years ago. And one of the gifts that were opened up was clairvoyance, which is seeing imagery. And I normally see it with my eyes closed during meditation, or when I'm working with a session when someone, and I see angels and animals and all. And one of the animals that would come up every so often would be whale. And a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to California, to Monterey, and I was going, oh, I need to go, the whales are there. And my hand would reach out every time I would talk about it. My hand would reach out, my left hand. And so the story that is in this book is about what happened, my experience. And it's over 2 trips. And the one thing that I wanted to share about this is, as you open up your experience with your spirit animal, whether it is in actual, you see them every day, or the experiences that you have in actual time, or in your visions, is that the more that you do this, the more things are going to happen. And your intuition is going to lead you to do certain things. And that's what was happening to me. And I listened to my intuition. I went to whale watching voyage, and I literally connected with the energy of the ocean. And I'm still getting chill bumps right now to even think of what happened. And I was at the foot of the boat there, the front of the boat, and there were a lot of people around there. but I wasn't afraid to actually do what I needed to do. And Spirit was calling me to reach out and connect with the ocean and connect with the animals and all. And I loved them. And so after another time I went there, what ended up happening is I had this experience with a ghost whale. And I was there for that whale to help release it. And we have this interconnectedness that Stephen was saying right in the very beginning, and opening your heart to be able to do this, following that intuition, listening to it and opening up. There's so many possibilities. They are there for us, but we have to also realize we're there for them too. And the blessings and the reverence that I have on these experiences is incredible. The more that I open up to do this, and believe, and that's the most thing, is to believe and trust in yourself. All things are possible. And so that's the one thing that I wanted to share, listening to it, and how it can change your life, and those are others too. So blessings to all. And I just am so excited to hear these continued stories from everybody. Blessings. Thank you.
It is my hope that contributing to this anthology and sharing my story, it might allow others who have had experiences, like amazing experiences with animals, but considered them just to be like something cool and fairly, just something coincidental, that they might reconsider those experiences. And if they have, after reading stories like these, they might, have encounters and reconsider those encounters as something a little bit more than just chance, and that maybe something as of greater guidance and greater with a capital G. I think that shift in perspective, makes for both a greater connection to the animal realm, as Dr. Farmer said also at the beginning of this conversation, so much of that has been lost in our current time. And so having that, thinking about it in that way brings us a little closer. And so many people have shared their stories, opened up just a much different perspective. And that change, that shift in perspective, I think also bridges, the mundane and makes it magical. And that's just more fun.